Jason had never expected his life to take such an unexpected turn. He was just an ordinary young scientist, working in a small lab in the heart of a bustling, futuristic city. He'd spent most of his life fascinated by the unknown, by stars, galaxies, and the possibility of other worlds. But even with all his knowledge of the universe, nothing could have prepared him for what happened on that quiet evening. It was late when Jason arrived home. He had been working all day on a project involving intergalactic travel. Nothing too glamorous, just some theories about wormholes and the potential for human colonization of distant planets. But as he stepped inside his apartment, something felt different. The air seemed to hum with an energy he couldn't quite explain. His apartment, usually so quiet and sterile, was now filled with a strange electric tension. It was then that he saw her. At first, Jason thought he might be seeing things. Standing near his kitchen, bathed in the soft light from the city outside, was a woman. She was unlike anyone Jason had ever seen before. Her features were delicate, almost ethereal. Her skin was pale, smooth, and flawless, her long silver hair cascading down her back in waves, glowing slightly under the dim light. But what caught his attention the most was her eyes, violet and full of mystery, as if they held the secrets of the universe itself. "Who are you?" Jason asked, his voice a mixture of awe and confusion. He had been around a lot of things in his life, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The woman smiled softly, her lips curling into a gentle, almost knowing expression. "I mean you no harm, Earthling," she said, her voice calm, but carrying a weight that seemed to speak to his very soul. "I am a traveler from far beyond your world." Jason blinked, still trying to make sense of the situation. He had read about alien encounters, but he never thought it would be something like this. She was calm, collected, and spoke with an accent that seemed oddly familiar, but there was no mistaking it. She was not from Earth. "How did you get here?" Jason finally managed to ask, his mind racing. "And why are you in my apartment?" The woman took a step forward, her movements graceful, almost as if she were floating. "I've been searching for something," she explained. "I came here seeking refuge. My people, we are not safe. There are those who would harm me." Jason felt a wave of sympathy wash over him, though he couldn't quite explain why. "You're safe here," he said instinctively. "You can stay as long as you need." Her eyes softened, but her face remained unreadable. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But I don't know how long I can stay. The danger that it follows me." Without another word, she walked over to the small couch in the living room and sat down. Jason followed her, unsure of what to do next. The situation was surreal, like something out of one of those space novels he used to read as a kid. But this wasn't fiction. This was real. And for some reason he felt drawn to her, like an invisible force was pulling him in. He hesitated for a moment, then sat down on the armchair opposite her. "Are you alone?" he asked cautiously, his curiosity getting the best of him. The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, I have no one left. My people. They are scattered. Some are in hiding. Others are lost. I'm the last of my kind, it seems." Jason felt a pang of sadness for her. He couldn't imagine what it must be like to be the last of your species, to carry the weight of so much loss. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words didn't seem to come. Instead, they just sat there in silence, each of them, lost in their own thoughts. After a while, Jason stood up, trying to shake off the strange, heavy atmosphere. "You must be tired," he said, his voice breaking the silence. "You can stay here for the night. I've got a guest bedroom, and it's yours if you want it." The woman looked at him, her violet eyes filled with something he couldn't quite decipher. "I don't need much," she said softly. "But there is one thing I need. Your arms." Jason blinked in confusion. "What?" "Your arms," she repeated, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "Every night I must be close to you. It is instinct. Jason's mind spun, his thoughts running wild. What did she mean by that? Was she asking him to hold her? He had no idea what was going on, but something about her words, her presence, stirred a deep feeling inside him, one he couldn't ignore. He opened his mouth to ask more questions, but before he could, the woman stood up and walked toward him. Her movements were fluid, like she was weightless. Then, without warning, she slipped into his arms. Jason stood there frozen, unsure of what to do. He felt the warmth of her body against his, the softness of her skin. Her long silver hair brushed against his cheek, and for a brief moment it felt like time had stopped. Everything in the world faded away, leaving only the two of them, wrapped in this strange connection. She sighed softly, her head resting on his chest. "It's instinct," she murmured again, her voice barely a whisper. Jason's heart raced, his mind still trying to catch up with the situation. He had always imagined he would encounter aliens someday, but never like this. He wasn't sure what was happening between them, but for some reason he couldn't bring himself to pull away. Instead, he found himself holding her, his arms wrapping around her as though it was the most natural thing in the world. For a long time, they stood there in silence, the only sound the soft beating of their hearts. Jason didn't know what to think. He didn't know what the future held, or what this woman's presence meant for him, but one thing was clear. His life had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more interesting. As the night stretched on, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, he knew it would be unlike anything he had ever imagined. And so, as the hours ticked by, Jason and the mysterious alien woman remained in each other's arms, bound by something he couldn't understand, but felt deeply within his soul. The following days felt like a blur for Jason. It wasn't that the world outside had changed. Everything was still the same. The busy city streets, the hum of vehicles zipping through the air, and the endless lights of the city skyline. But everything in Jason's life had changed. The alien woman, who had simply appeared in his life so unexpectedly, had become an enigma that he couldn't quite figure out. Each morning she was gone by the time he woke up, and he never asked where she went. She would return in the evenings, slipping silently into his apartment like a shadow. She didn't speak much, and Jason was beginning to understand that she was a woman of few words. But it was more than her silence that captivated him. There was an unspoken connection between them that grew stronger each day, even if he didn't fully understand it. One night, after returning from a long day at the lab, Jason found her sitting on the couch, her violet eyes staring out the window. She appeared distant, lost in thought. Her silver hair shone faintly in the dim light, and there was something about the way she sat that made her seem like she wasn't entirely in this world. It was as if she belonged to a place far beyond Earth, far beyond anything Jason could comprehend. Jason hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, unsure if she even wanted to talk. He had noticed that her mood had changed in the past few days, as if something weighed heavily on her mind. She turned to him slowly, her gaze meeting his. "I am fine," she said, her voice calm but distant. "But I feel disconnected from everything here. It is strange to be on this planet. The air, the people, they are not like where I am from." Jason didn't know what to say. He could see that she was struggling with something deeper than just being lost in an unfamiliar place. There was a vulnerability in her eyes, a sense of longing that made him want to reach out and help her, even though he didn't know how. "Why did you come here?" he asked after a long pause. "What are you running from?" The woman looked down, her eyes flickering with a mix of sadness and something else, something Jason couldn't quite name. "I am running from my past," she said, quietly. "From my people's enemies. They will stop at nothing to destroy us. And now I fear they are close. They can sense me. They can feel the connection I have with you." Jason frowned, trying to understand. "What connection?" The woman hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is difficult to explain. My people, we are telepathic. We can sense each other's thoughts, emotions, and even the physical sensations of touch. We share everything. But this connection, the one I feel with you, is different. It is stronger than anything I have ever felt before, and it is not something I can control." Jason's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what she was saying. Telepathy? A deep, emotional bond? This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. He had always been fascinated by the idea of alien life, but now that he was face to face with it, he found himself struggling to process the reality of the situation. "So, you're saying that when you slip into my arms, it's not just because you want to be close?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. The woman nodded, her expression serious. "No, it is instinct, a need I cannot explain, but I do not just feel it physically. I feel it in my mind, my heart, and I fear it is becoming something I cannot ignore." Jason's heart skipped a beat as he processed her words. Was she saying that their connection wasn't just a passing feeling? That it was something deeper, something that tied them together even though they didn't fully understand it? The idea both thrilled and terrified him. It was a bond that couldn't be explained by logic or reason, and yet it was undeniable. "Is it dangerous?" he asked, his voice low. The woman looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and fear. "Yes," she replied softly. "The more we share, the stronger the connection becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the more they can sense it. They are watching us, Jason, and they will come for us if they know we are bonded." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of an enemy coming after them, after him, because of something as strange and unexplainable as their connection was both terrifying and unsettling. But he couldn't ignore the feeling that had been growing inside him, that inexplicable pull he felt every time she slipped into his arms. It wasn't just physical attraction. There was something deeper at play, something that went beyond words and reason. "I'll protect you," Jason said suddenly, surprising himself with the intensity of his words. "I don't know what this connection is, but I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." The woman studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching, his face as if trying to understand him. Finally, she nodded, though there was a look of caution in her eyes. "I am not sure you can protect me from what is coming, Jason, but I appreciate your words." She stood up slowly, her silver hair falling around her shoulders like a curtain. "I must go," she said, her voice soft but firm. "There is much I must do. I cannot stay in one place for too long. The danger is real." Jason watched her as she walked toward the door, a sense of helplessness creeping into his chest. He wanted to stop her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but the truth was, he didn't know if it would be. He didn't know how he could protect her from something he couldn't even understand. But as she reached the door, she turned to him one last time, her eyes locking with his. "I will return," she promised. "But remember, Jason, the bond we share is not just instinct, it is something more, and it will change everything." With that, she stepped out of the apartment, disappearing into the night, leaving Jason standing there, his heart racing, unsure of what the future held. Jason sat in his apartment, the weight of the woman's words still heavy in his mind. The connection between them was no longer just a mystery. It was something real, something that couldn't be ignored. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he understood about her world, her people, and what she was running from. And there was one question he kept coming back to. Why him? He had always been a scientist, someone who dealt with facts and data. But nothing in his scientific training had prepared him for this. There were no equations to explain the bond he shared with her, no charts to map out the strange feelings that seemed to grow stronger each time she was near. It wasn't something he could measure, and it wasn't something he could easily dismiss. His thoughts were interrupted when the door to his apartment opened and she stepped inside once again. Her presence seemed to fill the room, her long silver hair flowing behind her as she walked in. She looked different today, more serious, more distant. Her violet eyes were clouded with something that Jason couldn't quite place. He noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way she moved as if she were carrying the weight of something much larger than herself. "I'm glad you're back," Jason said, standing up from the couch. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the connection." The woman didn't immediately respond. She just stood there looking at him, her gaze intense as if she were searching for something inside him. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "I've been thinking about it too," she said, her words careful. "I didn't want to tell you the full truth, Jason. I was maybe hoping that the connection between us could be something simple, something harmless, but it's not. It never was." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, her eyes momentarily closing as if she were gathering her thoughts. "The bond we share, it's not just a telepathic connection. It's a link that ties our very beings together. I didn't choose it. It wasn't something I wanted. It just happened. And now, I can't escape it. Not without putting both of us at risk." Jason felt his chest tighten. "Why? What's so dangerous about it?" The woman walked over to the window, her back to him as she gazed out at the glowing cityscape. The lights of the city flickered beneath them, but the air between them seemed thick with something unspoken. "My people, Jason. We were once a great civilization, a peaceful people. We shared our knowledge and our technology with others, and for a time, we were admired and respected across the galaxy." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But we made enemies, powerful enemies. They saw our abilities, our telepathy, as a threat, and they wanted to take it from us, to control it." Jason felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to her story. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, but the fear in her eyes told him it was all too real. "They attacked us," she continued, her voice tight with emotion. "At first it was subtle. Small raids, sabotage, things we couldn't understand. But then, they destroyed our home. My people scattered. Some fled into hiding. Others were lost. And I was one of the few who survived. I escaped, but I've been running ever since." Jason took a step forward, his heart aching for her. He couldn't imagine the kind of pain she must have felt, losing everything she had ever known. "And now," she said, turning to face him, "they're after me again. They know I'm still alive. They know about the bond between us, and they will stop at nothing to tear us apart. If they find me, Jason, they will destroy everything we've built. The connection between us will only make it worse." Jason struggled to process everything she had just told him. He had known she was hiding something, but he hadn't realized the depth of the danger she was in. And now it was clear that whatever this bond was, it wasn't just a simple, harmless link. It was a weapon, one that could put both of them in jeopardy. "But why me?" Jason asked, his voice filled with confusion. "Why did this connection happen? Between us, I'm just a human. I don't have any special powers or abilities." The woman's expression softened slightly, but her eyes remained troubled. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe it was fate, or maybe it's just the way the universe works. But your mind, it's different from others. Stronger, more resilient. When I first encountered you, I didn't understand it. But now I see that your mind is capable of withstanding the strain of our connection. That's why it happened." Jason blinked, trying to wrap his head around her words. "So this bond, it's not just something that's happening between us physically. It's something mental, something emotional." "Yes," she replied. "The connection is a merging of our minds. Our feelings are very souls. It's not something I can control. And now that it's formed, it will only grow stronger. The more we share, the more they will sense it. They can track the bond, Jason. They can feel its pull. And once they find us, there's no escape." Jason felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He had never signed up for anything like this. He had just wanted to live a normal life, but now he was caught in the middle of something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman shook her head, her face filled with sorrow. "I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. But right now, the only thing we can do is stay hidden, stay apart. If we stay close, the bond will grow stronger, and they will find us faster." Jason's heart sank as he realized what she was saying. She wanted to stay away from him. She wanted to break the connection between them to keep him safe. But the thought of losing her, of severing the bond that had already begun to define so much of his life, was unbearable. "You want to leave?" he asked, the pain in his chest evident. "I have to," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "For both our sakes." Jason stood there, his mind in turmoil. He didn't want to lose her. He didn't want to let go of the connection that had formed so quickly, so intensely between them. But he knew she was right. As long as they stayed together, they would be putting themselves in greater danger. "I understand," Jason said quietly, though his heart screamed in protest. "But know this. Whatever happens, I'll be here. I won't let you go without a fight." The woman looked at him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and something else, something that Jason couldn't quite place. "Thank you, Jason. But this fight is one I must face alone." With that, she turned and walked toward the door, leaving Jason standing there, his heart heavy with the weight of their uncertain future. Jason spent the next few days in a daze. The weight of everything the woman had shared with him sat heavily on his mind. He had known from the start that something was different about her, but he hadn't understood how deep her troubles ran, or how high the stakes were. The bond they shared, something he had thought was an unusual but harmless connection, had now become a source of danger, a beacon that could be tracked by enemies Jason couldn't even begin to comprehend. She had left. The woman, whose name, as Jason learned, was Lyra, had walked out of his apartment that night, saying she needed to keep her distance for both their sakes. But Jason wasn't sure how long he could stand being apart from her. The connection between them was growing stronger, deeper, and every night he found himself searching for her, hoping she would return. He couldn't shake the feeling that she needed him just as much as he needed her. But despite the pain of her absence, Jason knew she was right. The bond between them wasn't just something strange or mystical. It was dangerous. And the enemies she had spoken of, the ones who had chased her across the stars, were closer than ever. One evening, as Jason sat at his desk working, a sharp, unfamiliar sound cut through the silence. He froze, listening. It was like a faint hum, a low vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The sound grew louder, more insistent, until it was vibrating through the walls. Jason's heart raced as the realization hit him. They had found her. They had found them. Without thinking, Jason stood up, his mind spinning. He had to find Lyra. He couldn't let them capture her, not after everything she had told him, not after everything they had been through together. He grabbed his jacket and rushed out of his apartment, racing through the streets of the city. It was chaos outside. People were running in every direction, their faces full of fear. The air felt thick with tension, as if the city itself knew something terrible was coming. Jason's steps quickened, his pulse pounding in his ears. He reached his apartment building's elevator and pressed the button, but it didn't move. The power had gone out. Cursing under his breath, he sprinted up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time. His mind was filled with thoughts of Lyra. Where was she? Was she safe? He had no idea how to find her, but he couldn't sit idly by and wait for whatever this was to take its course. The woman he had grown to care for, whether he was ready to admit it or not, was out there, and she was in danger. As he reached the rooftop, the sight before him made his blood run cold. Above the city, a fleet of dark ships hovered, their shapes outlined against the night sky. They were massive, sleek, and intimidating, like something out of a nightmare. Jason had never seen anything like it. They were not human-made. They were alien, and from what Lyra had told him, they belonged to the very enemy she had been running from. The ships cast a long shadow over the city, their engines humming with an otherworldly energy. Jason's mind raced as he watched the vessels, realizing the truth of what Lyra had warned him about. The enemy had found her, and now they were coming for her, for both of them. In a panic, Jason pulled out his phone and tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. She wasn't answering. His heart sank and a sense of dread washed over him. He had no idea where she was, but he knew she would be trying to hide, to stay away from the danger. And if they found her? Jason couldn't even bear to think of it. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the tension. "Jason!" He whipped around, his eyes scanning the rooftop. Lyra was there, standing at the edge, her eyes wide with fear but also determination. Her hair shimmered in the dim light of the ships above, and her expression was one of urgency. Without thinking, he rushed toward her. "Lyra!" he called out. "You need to get inside now." She didn't move. Instead, she stood tall, looking up at the ships as they began to descend toward the city. "They've found us," she said quietly, her voice filled with both resignation and resolve. "It's too late to hide now. They'll find us no matter where we go. The bond between us is too strong." Jason reached her and grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the edge. "We have to get out of here," he said, panic rising in his voice. "We can't fight them, Lyra. We have to run." But she shook her head, her expression hardening. "I won't run anymore, not from them. I can't." She turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his with a fierce intensity. "Jason, I'm not the same person I was before. The bond we share, it's more than just a connection, it's a weapon. If we can't sever it, they will use it against us. They will use me against you." Jason felt a chill wash over him as he understood what she meant. The bond between them wasn't just something that could be tracked. It was a link that could be exploited. The enemies Lyra had been running from would do anything to control that bond, to turn it into a weapon. And if they did, Jason would be in even greater danger. "We have to fight back," Jason said, his voice stronger than before. "We can't let them take you." Lyra reached out and touched his cheek gently, her expression softening. "You don't understand, Jason. I'm the one they want. They'll destroy everything around us to get to me. And if they can break the bond, they'll use it to control me, to control us both." Jason's heart clenched. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "Then we'll fight them together," he said, his voice firm. "I don't care what happens. We have to stop them. I won't let them destroy us." For a moment, Lyra didn't speak. She just stood there, her eyes locked on his, as if searching for something. Then slowly, she nodded. "All right, but we have to be careful. I've been running for so long, I can't do this alone." Jason nodded, determination settling in his chest. "You're not alone anymore. I'm with you." At that moment, a loud explosion echoed through the city, shaking the ground beneath them. Jason and Lyra turned in unison to see one of the ships opening fire on a nearby building. The destruction was swift and brutal, and Jason's heart raced with the realization that the enemy was not holding back. They weren't just coming for Lyra. They were coming for anyone who stood in their way. "We need to move now," Lyra said, her voice urgent. "They'll come for us next." Together they ran across the rooftop, finding a stairwell that led down into the building. Jason's mind raced as they descended, his thoughts full of one thing: survival. He didn't know how they could fight these powerful alien forces, but he knew one thing for certain: they couldn't let them win. The battle was just beginning. The night had fallen over the city, but the sky was no longer peaceful. The once beautiful lights of the skyline were now hidden behind the looming shadows of the alien ships. Jason and Lyra had barely managed to escape the rooftop, and they were now in the depths of the building, hiding in a small, darkened storage room. They were out of sight, but Jason knew that wouldn't last long. The enemy was closing in on them. Lyra's breath was shallow, her eyes darting to the window as she strained to listen for any sounds of movement outside. Jason could feel the tension radiating from her, the unease that seemed to hang in the air like a thick fog. Every second felt like an eternity, and the only thing he could think about was how to keep her safe. But with each passing moment, the odds seemed to grow slimmer. "We can't stay here," Jason said, his voice low but firm. "We need to keep moving. We can't just hide." Lyra nodded, her face pale. "I know. But where do we go? They're everywhere, Jason. They can feel the bond between us. We can't outrun them and we can't hide from them, not anymore." Jason clenched his fists, trying to focus. He had always prided himself on being able to think clearly in tough situations. But this was different. This wasn't just a problem to be solved with logic or reason. This was about survival, and about protecting Lyra, the one person who meant more to him than he could even explain. "We don't have much time," Jason continued, pacing back and forth. "But we need to come up with a plan. If we're going to fight, we need to make sure we have an advantage. We can't take them all on head-on." Lyra stood up slowly, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "I can't promise we'll win this, Jason. You have to understand that. The enemy we're facing is stronger, faster, and they've been hunting us for years. They know everything about me, about my kind. They won't stop until they have us." Jason took a step closer to her, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm not asking you to promise anything," he said, his voice full of determination. "I'm just asking you to fight with me. We don't have to face them alone. We can do this together." For a long moment, Lyra just stared at him. Jason could see the doubt in her eyes, the hesitation, but there was also something else. A spark of hope, a flicker of the strength she had shown when they first met. She had been running for so long, and now, here she was, at the edge of everything. The weight of her past, of the dangers that followed her, was crushing. But Jason could see that she was starting to believe in something again. Maybe it wasn't just about surviving anymore. Maybe it was about fighting for something worth protecting. "All right," she said softly, "but we need to act quickly. We don't have much time before they locate us again." Jason nodded. "Then we'll make it count." The two of them moved swiftly through the building, staying in the shadows, avoiding the patrols that had begun to sweep the area. Jason had no idea how many enemies were out there, or how advanced their technology was, but he knew they had to take every advantage they could. As they neared the lower levels of the building, Jason stopped suddenly, holding up his hand for Lyra to halt. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Lyra listened intently, her sharp hearing picking up the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the hallway. They were close, too close. Jason's mind raced. The building wasn't large, but it was enough of a maze to give them a few more minutes of escape. They couldn't afford to be cornered. "I have an idea," Jason said, looking around quickly. "There's a maintenance tunnel on the next floor. If we can make it there, we can get out of the building without being seen." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "And then what?" "We keep moving. We find a place where we can fight back. We might not have the firepower or the technology to defeat them, but we have something they don't." "And what's that?" Jason turned to her, his gaze steady. "Each other." They made their way to the maintenance tunnel, staying low to avoid detection. The air felt thick and Jason's heart was racing, but he focused on keeping Lyra close, making sure they didn't make any noise. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Jason thought about how much their lives had changed in such a short amount of time. He had gone from being a scientist, working on theoretical projects, to being thrust into the center of an intergalactic war, and in the process he had become something he never expected, a protector. The maintenance tunnel opened up into a small underground parking garage, and Jason's pulse quickened when he saw that there were no signs of immediate danger. The garage was empty, but he knew that wouldn't last long. They had to act fast. "We need to get to the city's outskirts," Lyra said, looking around as if calculating their next move. "There's a safe house there. I've been there before. If we can make it there, we'll have a chance." Jason didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." They moved quickly through the garage, and as they reached the exit, Jason's heart sank. Several of the alien ships were hovering just outside, their lights, casting eerie shadows on the ground. It was clear that they were searching for something or someone. Lyra had been right. They could feel the bond. And now, it was only a matter of time before they found Jason and Lyra. "I can't let them take you, Lyra," Jason said, turning to her. "If it comes down to it, I'll fight them myself." Lyra shook her head, her expression soft but firm. "No, Jason. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for me. I won't let you." The two of them shared a quiet moment, their bond stronger than ever. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't about running. It was about fighting for a future, together. But that future wasn't guaranteed. Not with the enemies they faced. Jason's eyes met hers one last time before they both turned and ran. The enemy was closing in, and they had no idea what the future held, but they were determined to make it out alive, whatever it took. As they moved through the shadows, the sound of the ships growing louder behind them, Jason knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other, and for the chance to build a future in a world that didn't want them to exist.